Okay, it's recording also here.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, First of all, thank you for doing this and for your work. And second of all, I wanted to make sure I have a proper pronunciation of your name.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was reading Mualem-Doron, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
okay. Um, so since it seems to be the center of a lot of what you're doing today, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the SEAS and what you guys are doing now. Let's start with that.
Okay. Um, well, I'm calling it C's. It's like the plural of C.
Yeah.
And I opened it in my own house, in my own living room when I moved from London to Brighton. And part of the move was there were various reasons, but very personal reason was that I realized I'm not going back to live in Israel, and to keep my sanity, I needed the sea next to me. So it's like between Brighton Sea and Jaffa Sea. So this is kind of why it's in a way called SEAS, but it's also the um, um, acronym you said. It's the combination of Socially Engaged Art Salon, so SEAS.
Yes.
Um, and I opened it when I realized that there are not many places, if at all, when I moved in Brighton that exhibit socially engaged art or political art, not as a theme and pretty much not at all as practice, as social practices. And this was, in a way, opportunity for me and other artists that I invited. Um, Now it's grew and grew to this situation that in the last exhibition we had 50 people in the living room, 30 outside waiting to go in, 5 dogs going around, a TV crew, and the choir singing from the from the kitchen. So
Marvelous.
and my neighbor then opened the door and shouted at the people outside that this is not the Middle East, so they can't stand like that in the street. She was UKIP supporter. So it was difficult to have something like that, for we had about 3 exhibitions per year. It's all month, all of the weekends, basically the house become kind of a public space, which in a way it's nice, but it's difficult as well. And then I moved the whole operation to the Black and minority ethnic community partnership, which is kind of sort of community center for BIPOC communities in Brighton. And the emphasis stays the same. We exhibit social and political art, socially engaged practices, and the idea is to give opportunities for underrepresented groups, marginalized groups. If it's here, it's called BAME. People don't really like that, but it's Black and people of color, artists with disabilities, what we call outside artists that never had, never studied art, fine art, and LGBTQ artists, basically opportunity to exhibit their work. And because it's in non-art spaces, it's not an art space. We have a room there, well, a basement. This kind of work is exposed to communities that often won't visit, museums or galleries. So I think it's beneficial for on both sides. So yeah, it's a very small organization, but it seems to work, and hopefully it will continue. I don't know if I'll continue it personally. It might be that I'll find other people to continue with that, because it is a lot of work and affect my own, art practice. But I think it's something that is still very much needed.
Um, this is a practice that almost by definition needs people to gather. So what's been happening? How have you had to adjust or adapt in a situation where we can't gather? I don't know what the COVID quarantine situation is there,
Yeah, it's
but here it would be next to impossible to run an organization like that in this climate, this situation.
yeah. So most of our, well, since we had to cancel one exhibition in April, but since April, everything gone online. So we have online exhibitions, online events and talks. Recently, it's become a bit better. I mean, last month. And then our exhibition for Black History Month, which was also coincide with Right on Photo Fringe, took place also there, but not at C space, because it's basement in no window, but at the lobby, which was very good because the center now become a food distribution point. It's a food bank.
Oh, okay.
So we have all of people that come into the food bank able to see the exhibition, while they are waiting, etc. So it is, it was nice to see people who, are really in a bad situation. At least they, engage with some artwork, and it's all most of the artwork were experiences of BIPOC artists or communities. And we start to exhibit also in the local library with exhibition that is facing the most kind of central public space in Brighton, a small square in the center of Brighton. So you find ways, you find ways around it.
I think this is the constant condition of artists is finding a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I had a big solo exhibition in London, which was severely affected by that in terms of number of visitors, etc. But you just need to keep going. I mean, there's no other way. So.
Well, and regardless of for example, level of attendance, uh, my experience has been that every exhibition teaches you more, no matter how long you've been doing this. I've been an artist for 23 years now, and even the ones that wouldn't be considered successful by ordinary standards were definitely strong learning experiences, and they led to some surprising things afterward. That the situation of the moment as it appears isn't indicative. It doesn't suggest what will come after that.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, you said when talking about Cs that one of the benefits is that people, as you said, who would not ordinarily go into a museum or a gallery, the two things I'd want to ask about that is, where does that reluctance come from, in your opinion? And also, do you think that now that we are in a situation where nobody can go anywhere, that there may be developing an understanding from people who are ordinarily much more empowered and much more privileged to begin to understand what it is like to be kept away from things? That often the complaint is, I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything, without necessarily recognizing that there are lots and lots of people already who have always been in that situation. Do you think that COVID is changing people's understanding of what it means to be outside of the circle of privilege, so to speak, whether it's social privilege, racial privilege, uh, ability privilege for those who are disabled? Do you think some new understanding might happen?
It's complex, but I think unfortunately not, because you still, at least if you have the time, and it's become more a question of time rather than money to a certain extent. And the call it cultural network, um, what you easily access in terms that you don't really need to do a lot of search, etc. So if you're already in the cultural milieu, you will be aware of, okay, this Zoom meeting is happening, and that conference, and it's, while most of it gone online, it's still, you need to be in the know to certain extent, and you need to have the time and the mental space as well to access it. So,
Right.
the difficulties for a mom with two kids, even, middle class, to attend, particular event will still be the difficulties, especially when the kids now at home, etc. You might not get a nanny because of COVID, etc. So it's still there. For people who are economically devastated, even more so because of the COVID. Sometimes it's just, the mental space to participate in this kind of cultural event is still there. I mean, but it started much before that, and this is what COVID won't change. First of all, you have big, large amount of people to whom art is not part of their life. It's just because it's not. It's not in the general media. It's not. It's just. It's somewhere there. And they didn't study it in schools. And if you don't study in school, it's much more difficult. They won't go to museums because it's expensive, travels, but also entrance. It's just not part of the life. And because the mass media give less and less space for the art, unless it's really kind of big names, and it's all become kind of a carnival around Van Gogh or Ciccioli, or
Right. What we call the blockbuster
yeah,
exhibit.
the blockbusters, which, okay, maybe they'll be exposed for that. But again, to go to an exhibition of blockbuster in British Museum in London, you're talking about 15 to 20 pound entrance, single ticket. Not to mention the travel there, and if you have kids, food on the way. It's pretty expensive. Now, it could be that, now when museums doing virtual tools, etc., it's more accessible, but you do need to be already with kind of background to even take interest to go to the website and look for it. So it's a lot of questions of promotion.
Right. Because if it's not, as you say, if it's not part of your own personal background and upbringing, it's difficult to connect.
Yeah.
With the work.
Yeah, and it's still, when it's online, it's still a place that you need to go into. This is the difference between doing that and exhibiting it in a community center that people are there anyhow because they're coming to get their food or any other reasons, and they just see it on the wall. It's different than having it in the street, than people passing by and might stop for a minute. So I do believe greatly art in public spaces, but a lot of work still need to be done to have these opportunities, because the public space in Western cities, at least, I assume that it's also not Western cities, it's a capitalist space. So every opportunity to show something will be occupied by commercials, by advertisements, and
Yeah,
not
but
art.
there are hurdles to overcome even when we're talking about common public spaces.
Yeah, yeah.
That there's somebody who, as you mentioned earlier, somebody who comes along and says you can't do that. This is a nuisance. Um, that it's probably common. Maybe you would agree or not, but I find it common for artists to be chased out of public spaces where they do their work.
It's not even chase. I mean, if I'll exhibit an art which is associated with me, I'll get fined. I can be fined. There is no free space because it's all of it privatized. So you get fined, and if it's public in terms of belong to the local council, or the state, you still need to have a permission.
Mm-hmm.
And often these spaces are still used for commercial, to get revenues. So
But you managed to bring, for example, the new Union Jack project, of which this mask is now an outgrowth. The mask that's in the Babel Masks show is, I realized, part of something much bigger, and how much of an effect it seems to have, as it appears in public. And for example, you talk about taking it and putting it on the beach, and asking people, inviting them to sit and choose whichever one they want, and why, and whichever flag they chose, there was, for the benefit of people seeing this, you submitted a mask which is the design of your sort of living work, New Union Jack, which is
New Union flag.
In terms of design, it's based on the shapes of the Union Jack, but it is always growing, because as every new community comes into the UK, a bit of their decision, their textile or design is added. And so it almost, to me, it looks like an American quilt. It's very, very beautiful.
Okay.
And what I absolutely love is that it's always changing, as things change. And whether people chose the Union Jack, which is the official UK flag, or they chose the new Union Jack, it gave everybody an opportunity to give voice to their decision, to explain why they chose the one that they chose. And to me, that was an amazing result of this, of this practice. And so,
just a remark, I call it the New Union flag, not New Union Jack.
I beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. Okay, yeah, New Union flag.
And apropos America, I created also one for the United States, but it didn't take off. I proposed it to some institutes in the States, but I think while in the UK, at least the majority of the authorities are much more flexible with the flag, because it's all not, the Union Jack is not protected by law here. It's not officially, there is no law that's saying that the Union Jack is the flag of the UK. It's become like that from tradition.
A convention, yeah.
Yeah, a convention. In the States, the flag is protected by law. So, and I think the majority of people, even if they are, let's say, left-wing, central left-wing, still will have much more sympathy and feeling of belonging to this flag. The Union Jack in the UK, at least in the several years, was hijacked by the right wing and the extreme right wing. And it's associated even before that with colonialism, because this is the flag under half of the world was colonized
Yes.
by Great Britain. So it's very, I think it's very different. It's very different.
There may be, it depends at what point, because I think we are in an inflection point right now where offered in the right situation, that project probably would have more consideration. And I don't know. I don't know how true it is that the flag is protected by law. It's probably because we have a similar structure to other democracies, which is there is a state level of law and then there's a national level of law.
Mm.
So it is a big country, and I don't know the laws of all 50 states. So it's entirely possible that there are state level laws that have something to say about the American flag. I know that for most of my lifetime, certain people have struggled to put into law, that the flag may not be burned, which seems to be a massive interest over something that never really happens. And even a constitutional amendment, which is incredibly hard to pass. So there's no national law concerning our flag, first of all. But the other thing is, whereas the right wing or the conservative, politically conservative people insist that this flag be, defended, all the things that they say, they're now, the flag has been co-opted by people who support the police in situations of, these questions of cases of brutality or slaughter or murder that have happened between policemen and mostly black men.
Mm.
And so now you will see a version of the United States flag around here where it's been turned into a black and white image. So there's no more red, white, and blue, and all you've got is one stripe of blue in respect to the police. And it's a way of declaring that if you had to say, you would say that there is not such a terrible problem with police brutality. So the refiguring of our flag has become a political statement and if you want to call it this, a refiguration of the flag that 20 years ago, if it had happened the other way, if liberals or progressives had redesigned the flag not by shape but by color, politically conservative people would have been infuriated.
Okay.
But now they're refiguring the flag, so it goes in a circle. You go far enough left, you come right again.
Yeah. Well, it found a place for me to do the project. It was planned to be a take on the tradition of the traveling salesman, and it was supposed to be along the one proposal along, I think, 100 route, the other one 66, and basically doing very similar kind of national tour that I took it here and get people to participate. I was commissioned surprisingly in Israel to do a project by Haifa Museum of Art. So they wanted to exhibit the new Union flag, the British one, and I'm reluctant to exhibit work in Israel, although I'm from there, that are not related to the what is called Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So I said that I will exhibit the British one if I'll get commissioned to design a new Israeli one. Well, I won't call it Israeli because I have a problem with at the moment to have association with particular name of particular community, i.e. to see it as a Jewish state. I think it needs to be state of everybody who lives there, same as America is, the US is. But I proposed a new flag, and in Israel it definitely goes against the law. It goes, there is the flag law, and there is the national law, and it goes against these laws. And there was a few weeks of silence, which was kind of worrying after I proposed it. And apparently it went into the legal team, and in the end it was exhibited. So, you know, you never know. Um, which was it was strange, but it's a long story. I saw a video of one of the gallery's invigilators taking a tour of people through the gallery and trying to explain it, and it was a very different explanation than my one of what the art is. So you can take and put might be very controversial, almost, semi-legal art in a museum, but you don't have the control of how, people will interpret it when it's there. So, yeah.
So to pivot a little bit back to your project, I'm glad, by the way, that you told me about that project. The Palestinian and Israeli conflict, as they call it, has been so complex and has happened for so long, that when it comes to this, it's better for me to listen than to comment, because I don't live there and I don't come from there. I have spoken and made friends with other artists who are similarly connected to Israel and Palestine, that they lived in one place or the other, but their connection to it is multifaceted. And it always, for me, in that conversation, it always is better for me to listen than to sort of comment and say what I think about it, because it seems to me that I could listen for years and still not really understand, the back and forth. But there are definite political positions in the United States that favor Israel most of the time. And for that reason, I find it important to pay special attention to the Palestinian point of view,
Yeah.
because it's the one that gets less oxygen here, if you want to put it that way.
So, yeah.
So I'm very glad that you talked about that. I'd like to talk more about the mask, because I feel that in a way I'm not in a position to speak intelligently about Israeli-Palestine political matters, but I'm always very happy to hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a byproduct that was quite expensive. I do a lot of work on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and about the history of the regions, etc. Being Jewish Israeli, I feel that it's my obligation to do so, and its emotional connections. But yeah, this work, also because I'm not living there anymore, is very different from the New Union flag work, which I could create and operate and develop with communities, with actual communities that I work with here. So,
mm-hmm. What changes? Well, actually, I had some questions down, but what changes do you see? Are changes visible to you? Sometimes as artists, we don't see the effect our work has right away. Do you perceive changes in your own community of artists around the conversations of multiculturalism, or globalism or Brexit, or like, do you feel that this work is supporting and lifting up voices that didn't have a stage before? And how is that connected with the sort of social process of bringing the art as a practice into social awareness?
I don't know if I can say that this project particularly, but the New Union Flag project started quite some time before Brexit. A lot of people think that it's, you know, it's kind of a Brexit project, but it started about a year and a half before Brexit, and it started with the rise of the UKIP party. Now, as a Jewish with a mom that she's Holocaust survivor, I'm very sensitive, you know, every time that these kind of parties like UKIP, far-right parties are rearing their head, you know, I'm very sensitive for that, both because of, you know, my family history, but also being in Israel and see how the map shift to the extreme right. So this was one of the triggers for the creation of the project. And if we're talking about, just before that, as mentioned, I have a distant relative here in the UK. She and her family are here for hundreds of years. I mean, they're completely, you know, English, you know, no accent like my heavy one, etc. But because she has black hair and hook nose, slightly hook nose, every time she going to a taxi or, you know, something in shop, etc., people asking her where she's from. So this was another trigger. And the project itself didn't start as socially engaged as such, because it was an opportunity, it was an open call for artwork in a gallery in South London, which the gallery itself is doing quite a lot of socially engaged work, but this was just kind of a Christmas exhibition. I don't know if you have it in the States, you know, it's kind of a sale exhibition, basically, give artists opportunities to sell their work before Christmas.
Yeah, we have these a lot.
Yeah. So it was this kind of scenario, and I'm not really commercial artist. I mean, I don't produce, you know, art in the mind of selling it. I mean, it's sometimes necessity, but it's not like the what is in my mind. And I wanted to create a work there that is associated also with the environment. So it's very, very multicultural neighborhood, and I won't tell the whole story how it's developed, but it's a development of an older work that completely in different context. It was a work that was floor-based, and then intervention of people by actually stepping on the work, etc., which I couldn't do in this exhibition. So I had to have something on the wall, and then I said, okay, I'm going to use the flag. And the flag was actually made originally from something from a floor mat. You know, you can buy, I don't know if you can buy in the States, but here you can buy the Union Jack printed on floor mat, you know, the one that you have in the entrance to clean your feet, which is strange concept, you know. If you're, you know, kind of respecter of the flag, why you do that? I mean, I don't think you see it in Israel or in Muslim countries as well. You know, feet is something dirty. You don't, you know, wipe your feet on the flag, but you can buy it here, and people do. And I use that version, and I just cut parts of it and replace it with textiles that I got from the local shops in that area. Most of the local shops there are, you know, African shops, Indian shops, bringing ethnic textiles. And so it's become a big part of it on the issues of representation of diasporic communities, communities that arrived in this country because of colonialism, slavery, etc. And this was the work. So it was exhibited on the wall like that in a frame, but I kept the cutouts from the flag, from this doormat in another frame. Now, I don't know if you had it in the States, but here, 10, 20 years ago, you could go to novelty shops, present shops, and you get these frames with a cigarette inside or a condom or something like that, and it's saying underneath, break in case of emergency. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I haven't seen that, but I completely believe it's possible we have that.
Yeah, it was very common.
It translates really well.
Yeah. So I had the same kind of frame with the cutouts from the flag, and the text underneath was saying, you keep it just in case. Playing on the word, you keep the party and keep it, just in case. Imagining, that somebody that buying this artwork and having it in the living room, and the whole political, map is changing to much worse, and they are afraid people will see the sabotage of the flag on their wall, so they can always stick back the part of that I cut out on top of the ethnic fabrics and pretend that it's just a regular Union Jack. So this is kind of, so it's imagined participation, within a context of the need of selling the artwork. Only after that, which I did digital version, I started to take it to use it in social gathering and demonstrations. This was the first that I started to engage with people, on the level of what you think about this, would you hold it? So instead of signing a petition, we want to replace the Union Jack, they just hold this flag and, as supporting the idea of replacement. And then it started into conversation, recorded conversation. And after a year of this kind of engagement, it started to go into galleries, museums, but it's never stayed there. It's always back and forth from, the public space to more controlled spaces.
Let's see, I want to look at there was a question here. It's changing topics a little. This has to do with your practice as something that involves aesthetic along with political or social statement. And this is a quote from the main page of your website. So the quote is, we want artists to be brave tellers of truth, not just creators of seductive images or spatial contortionists. Mualem-Doron is one of those brave truth tellers who sees the inequities in daily life and highlights them through his art, which is neither didactic nor simple-minded. So my question about this statement is to unpack it just a little, and to ask you as an artist, generally, and not just with this project, how do you see the interaction between semiotics and aesthetics? When do you know if you've gone too far or not far enough to strike that balance? If this is the feedback or the statement that is given by a curator about your work, how do you feel that you came to arrive at that place? Because that is a very hard balance to strike, and oftentimes people make aesthetically beautiful but essentially meaningless work, or they make political work that doesn't actually connect because there are missing components of aesthetics. So that's not an easy, it's not an easy path to go down.
No, it's not easy, and it's always an issue with my work. How you strike the balance? I don't know if there is a conscious way that, at least not in the beginning, and because my work usually goes under project rather than single work, I hardly ever do one single work. It's usually very long process, and the work will be created and then changed and developed, and definitely in this kind of project. I mean, I do a lot of photography. So in photography, sometimes, yeah, you take the photograph and it's kind of is ended. Maybe sometimes you'll edit it later, create a moving images with a series of images, etc. With my latest project will be also interviews of the people I photograph, etc. But usually it's much more contained. With this kind of project, I can even talk about something very particular that happened with the New Union flag. So, you know, after it was exhibited in the gallery, for me, it didn't have the effect that I wanted. It was just limited, you know, it was a short time exhibition, it was a group exhibition, it was in a, you know, gallery, confined space, etc. I felt that the work didn't do what I wanted it to do. So from something which was handmade, one-off piece, etc., I decided to recreate it as a digital work and then print it, you know, commercially, and then use it in events. And then I didn't even plan that in the beginning to add more fabrics. It just happened that people say, where is my textile design? So there was a Greek person saying, but there is no Greek motive in your flag, and I'm a UK citizen, so it's added. I was almost literally was beaten by angry Welsh lady that saw the work and said, not only that we are excluded from the Union Jack because Welsh doesn't have representation in the Union Jack, you also excluded us. Where is our dragon? But then I needed to explain her, it's not about the symbols of other flags or other flags motive. It is textile designs which are predated almost any national flag. And then she will start thinking, oh yeah, what textile design do we have? She couldn't really say at the time. So I did the research and I found the particular kind of motifs which surprisingly look very African, which was really strange because they do look very similar to some African motifs pre-colonial rule, before the Dutch spread their designs all over Africa, which is another story. So part of it is because they were going somewhere else and there is interaction with audiences, the work changed. So I can't say that there is a striking a balance. There was another issue with the flag. So for a long time, when I started taking it to public spaces, the only people that were photographed, you know, with the flag were the ones that were willing to hold it and agree that the flag should be changed. And my proposal is better than the current Union Jack. But there were people who didn't agree with that. So they weren't photographed. So they weren't in the further exhibition that showed the photograph of people holding the flag or online, and it was all on social media. By now, I think 80,000 engagement with the project online, you know, with hundreds, at least 400, I think, comments, most of them from the right wing. And I won't give you the quotes because it's too, don't know how to even to phrase it, but including death threats. But then I just kind of suddenly realized that there is no representation of this, you know, people who are not supporting. So when the flag was exhibited as a room installation at the Tate Modern, I decided, okay, this is a point where I'm putting also the Union Jack. So the work there was kind of a market stall, which one side of the stall was the New Union flag with a lot of kind of objects like mags and t-shirts and etc. And the other side there was the Union Jack, and then people who wanted to be that support the Union Jack as it is, there will be photographed there.
I see. You know what this puts me in mind of, actually, I think that was an excellent way to go at it, because the two flags talk to each other and they raise questions in the mind of the visitor or the viewer. I'm sure you're familiar with Jasper John's flag painting, where he sort of bleaches the image of the American flag of its color. But it's a marvelous painting all the same, and it is a color painting. But we can do backflips with paint as artists.
Yeah.
You know, and my initial reaction to seeing this flag was, first of all, that was brave, because whether there's a law against it or not, as you know, as we discussed earlier, altering the image of the flag elicits a strong reaction in people, and it's a little bit different for everybody. But you know, it caused me to examine my relationship to the image of the American flag, because I grew up in a rather conservative, you know, community that would sort of defend the flag in its current form. And so there were things that I realized over my life I had accepted about the flag, without really examining it. But seeing Jasper John's painting brought that into relief. And if anything, I would say that it deepens my respect for the principles that our country was built on, and recognizing that the flag it's a jumping off place. It's a point of departure from which I can think more about you know, the meaning of my citizenship, or the meaning of the country I come from. You know, if I want to consider my identity as an American, then I have the freedom to do so on my own terms. You know, so all of these things were brought to the surface by Jasper John's rearrangement of the image. And it doesn't make me like our own flag any less, or feel that there's anything retroactive about it. Yes. But to have those two things side by side allows the viewer to think about it. You know, you take something that is such a strong static sign in the mind, and you just divert that, and suddenly new thoughts come to mind. So that has to be effective. You know?
I don't know how, for example, Native American will feel about the American flag, for example, but it will be closer, I think, to the feeling that I have. All diasporic communities will feel, I think, toward the British flag. I mean, I was born here, but I grew up elsewhere. I grew up in Israel, but the fact that I was born here for the start was because of British colonial rule in the Middle East. This basically what brought my parents to the UK. There is a very well-known book, really important book about issues of British identity and colonialism, colonial history, imperial history, by Paul Gilroy, and it's kind of was set in the back of my mind when I think I created the flag, although not consciously, which called "There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack," and I believe that from reading, rereading the book, and looking at my project, the tactic that we used is very similar. So he used the phrase, "There is no black in the Union Jack," which is coming from the right wing, nationalists. They will shout, "There is no black in the Union Jack." I think it was, if I remember correctly, in football games. So they're not supposed to be black people, playing in the English league, because they are not, English. The whole association of Englishness with whiteness, for example. So he used the frame, but the same phrase, but critically. It's in a way I decided to use the flag, which is the most nationalistic kind of emblem, to turn it on its head. So this project, when I'm, talking about this project, especially in, high places of influence, I presented it that we do need to re-engage people with the flag, It's not the Union Jack flag, it's my flag. But I'm describing it as we should have a flag day every year where the flag will be, put up in all of the public institutes, and the children will do artwork about that, exactly the language of almost fascist state when you're talking about, the flag day. But it is a flag which is created by the diversity of this nation, and take on the history, and continue to do so by the fact that the idea is that there will be an office of the flag office and government department where migrants to this country every year, if they don't find their textile design on the flag, send a sample to the flag office and they update in the flag. So it's
I love that idea. That is fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so
and that's why I say, this is a living work of art that you've created.
Yeah, I just need to convince the government to open such an office and adopt the flag. So
that's, now that I begin to think, we've gone back and forth across the ocean, so to speak, to talk about American attitudes and British attitudes. Before I say that, when I first heard you say there is no black in the Union Jack, my quick assumption was that would be a protest from the side of people who feel not represented. Where am I in that flag? And instead of it being this sort of vicious exclusionary gesture. So that flipped over in a hurry. I thought, oh, that's so great. Tell people there's no, oh gosh, that's not good.
I actually had an incident with that, because for the Tate Modern, part of the work was a bumper jacket, a coat, bumper.
Yeah.
A coat,
a bumper jacket, yeah.
Yeah, so the back was with the Union Jack, and the front was with the new Union flag. Partly I was joking, I don't want anybody stabbing my back, seeing the new union flag. So just in case I'm no, because I did get, death threats online. So I was kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
cautious. And there were other incidents. But, it's a wearable work. So I started wearing it, it was part of the exhibition, but after it ended, I was just wearing the thing. And I was in the center of London, and somebody suddenly, when I was tapping my back, running and tapping my back and shouting me, then I saw, when he continued, shouting me, "There is no black in the Union Jack." But he turned over and he saw the new Union flag and see the color of my face. It's winter now, so usually it's browner. And I say, "Yeah, there is one now." This guy was actually a black person, so he was offended by the Union Jack that he saw on my back. But when he, ran and were in front of me and turned over, he saw, what is about. So this was kind of,
what did he do then?
no, he was just running. He smiled and continued running.
That's sort of like a darkly humorous story. There's a great deal of fear to that, violence or menace, but maybe we're in a time where those things aren't always. It's not always possible to separate the menace or the danger from. And to me, it's a signal that this dualism of one flag and the other is accomplishing something in a very immediate way. That this person and anybody who might be in the same situation of walking past you immediately has one assumption challenged. And those two events happen so close together that they must be connected in the mind. So I admire that a great deal. To me, that's actually, we were talking about how do you thread this needle? How do you go between too visually enticing without meaning or too political without aesthetic? And I think that story that you just told represents that middle point, that balancing point very, very well. Wow, that's really something. One thing I wanted to touch on, and this is a bit on behalf of C's, but in the catalog for the exhibition, you mentioned in your statement that the mask that you created for the show is sold to raise money for, you may have to set me straight, to raise money for C's, I imagine.
No, it was for the NHS, the National Health Service.
Oh, the NHS, okay.
Yeah.
So I looked on your website and a couple of other places, and I didn't see that is still happening. And for the benefit of anyone who would be interested, to both, buy a version of your work and to let that money go to the NHS, is there still an action happening that brings merchandise to the table that people could buy?
You can buy the mask, but I limited the donation for 3 months. So 3 months, all of the money, all of the profit from the mask went to the NHS, and then it's still there, but it's not mentioning that it's go to the NHS anymore.
Okay, so in support of the artist, where would people go? Or maybe you can email me that, but you can also, yeah, I'm curious.
It's a local shop in production shop, online shop in London, and they basically it's print on demand. So yeah. I used it in the past. They donated quite a lot of products, which I called agitprops, and the shop is also called agitprop, for a big installation that I had in the Turner Contemporary gallery in Margate, pretty much at the beginning of all of it was the first exhibition of the New Union flag. So I stayed with them, and there is other products with the New Union flag on it, and as well as face masks. It's called the shop itself. My shop called Agit Propo, if I remember correctly. I'll email it to you, and the general shop site is Bags of Love. But I'll email you. I'll
Okay.
email it to that. Yeah, it's tricky to produce this kind of stuff affordably, although it's still very cheap. It's like £5 per mask, something like that. I mean, it's very affordable. But I had some ideas of actually producing it on mass production, thousands of pieces. But it's I don't know, commercially if it's viable and how you deal with these issues. So now it's print on demand. It's not
I find print on demand to be a massive gift to artists, because before that was around, if you wanted, and I've been in that position early in my career, if I wanted to use my images on merchandise, I had to produce it, which meant, my cost
yeah,
was high. And then sometimes it wouldn't sell and I'd be stuck with merchandise that never gets used again. And it's daunting. There are artists who don't have the financial beginning to
yeah,
just do that. And so their access to what we'll just call the marketplace of ideas is limited. And, as in the instance of the Babel Masks, I certainly don't have the resources to print hundreds or thousands of copies of the catalog, but I can create it and leave it with the print on demand people. And then it's a relatively low barrier, depending on where you are and who you are. But in, ordinarily a color catalog would cost $30 or $40
yeah.
here. And something that size can be produced and mailed for under 20. So it's a little bit better for the people buying it, and it's much better for me as the producer of this show to give people an opportunity to do that without putting myself in a financial position that I can't occupy.
It's definitely makes things much, much easier. Although, one thing, I wanted it cheaper. One of the one of the stages in the project, I thought to open a souvenir shop. So in the UK, you have all of this souvenir shop with the Union Jack printed on anything, from underwears to teapots to pens, on everything. You see the Union Jack. And I wanted to part of the project to rent a shop and open this kind of a souvenir shop, but there is no way I can compete with all of the Union Jack printed on products which are all manufactured in China, probably by nearly slave workers. So you have all of the patriots buying the Union Jack manufactured in China and stuff that is manufactured by a British artist in a British manufacturing place, English manufacturing in London, it's just too expensive to buy. It's still tens of percents more than you buy, the Union Jack on objects. So, still have long to go to popularize, this new version of the flag.
I saw on your, I believe it was on your website, of the what I assumed was the facade of Seas, but perhaps it was a different area. But there was a scaffold that had a great big banner that was just the design. It was quite beautiful. And I wonder if it looks as though this flag may be becoming, what would you call it, sort of like the flag of an embassy of artists who are living in the UK. That when you're under this flag, you're in the world of artists, and you're in the world of people who think about this kind of issue, and people who work in service to diversity and inclusiveness, maybe.
Well, it's not my place to say, it's, sees Socially Engaged Art Salon is a side of my own practice. I'm managing the place, I'm curating some exhibition, etc. I did use not the flag, but various textile designs which incorporated into the Black Panther symbol of the fist, but in this version holding a brush, kind of created the logo for Seas, so using textile designs of a great diversity. But it's not my place to say what people think about the flag. What it is true is that several pro-refugee and migrants organizations did, if the art organization did support the flag and help to take it to various places and exhibit it. And some charities use the flag. I granted permission to use it in their events, and it was paraded by me, and other people in pro-refugee rallies and demonstrations, as well as, for example, Brighton Pride, LGBTQ Pride. It was an opportunity to march with it, and people got it immediately. I mean, what is good, I think, in the project, which might be not good from artistic point of view, and this is again, is it aesthetics, is it political message, etc. Is that it's pretty much what you see, it's what you get here. I mean, people get that this is a flag that represents the diversity of the United Kingdom. They might not get the whole scope of the project, where it started, what is the scope, etc. But they see this flag, they know this is the Union Jack, but it's not, the regular one, and it's something that to do with diversity because they see the various textile designs. So,
and again, it opens a window in the mind.
yeah.
It lets in ideas that otherwise would not have appeared,
Yeah.
We should wrap up, especially because my computer just told me it's running out of battery. But I want to thank you so much. I know that you're very busy, and taking the time to do this, I truly appreciate it, and I'm very excited to be able to share what you had to say with the artists in our group, and with anyone who wants to visit the YouTube channel. But yeah, we can follow up on email on a couple of things.
Yes.
And it's very nice to finally get to meet you face to face and talk to you.
Thank you.
So.
I'm planning to get to the state in certain stage, but sometimes, I don't know, hopefully to get to artist residency there. But on the there's one in New York and one in Los Angeles that I got my eye on. The thing is, with residencies in the States, a lot of them are in very remote nature places, which I won't feel very much comfortable, I think. I mean, I love nature, but my work is not about that. So it's, yeah. New England is very, very rural, isn't it?
It's very warm.
Rural.
Did you say?
Rural.
It's a mixture. It's probably a little bit like England, where you have isolated urban areas that are, I would say by far the biggest city here is Boston.
Okay.
And then you've got a couple of other medium cities, but it's mostly small towns. But New England is sort of the blue land. It's very liberal, and we're cheek by jowl with places like New York and Philadelphia, even though those are sort of south of New England. it's rural, but it's kind of like all the postcards you see with the barns and
Yeah.
the leaves, and you know, like a lot of beautiful places in the world, when you're there, you sort of get postcard overload, because you're like, I feel like I'm living in an image. But yeah, well, we'll be in touch again soon.
Congratulations
And
on the election, by the way.
what's that?
Congratulations on the election.
Oh, thank you. We're still holding our breath, but I think it's going to be okay.
You have to be dragged out.
Say it again.
You will have to be dragged out from the office kicking, I think.
Well, as toddlers do.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to switch off the recording now. So
Yeah.
just for notation, this is Dr. Gabriel Mualem-Doron as part of the Babel Masks exhibition, and Paula Billups on November 11th, 2020. And thank you for viewing this. And here goes the off button. Let's see.
You're going to, I need to stop the recording here.